Hello, my name's Emmanuel. I'm doing these videos as a kind of um, support for people on the spiritual path. I kind of specialize more in bhakti yoga in a Christian context, but sort of use also like the integral model from Ken Wilber's teachings, and sort of have a view of integrating all um, spiritual paths, having an understanding of all spiritual paths and where they fit in to the greater scheme of things. Um, Using, for instance, the integral model. Um, Today's talk is I'm going to have a bit of discussion about something that I experience in my personal spiritual practice, um, which um, is psychosis on the spiritual path, spiritual emergence and spiritual emergency. So this could be good even if you haven't experienced psychosis or spiritual emergency. Um, it can be relevant to things such as psychedelic uh, experiences, um, and also dreams. Dreams can there's sort of a similarity between dreams and psychedelic experiences, and psychosis, or what is also termed spiritual emergence. So I'm going to do a reading from this book that I've got here, which is called Spiritual Emergency, and Stanislav Grof is the main guy who did the bulk of the research on this stuff, um, making use of psychedelics and psychedelic experience as well. Um, um, yeah, so spiritual emergence has been something that's on my path, and um, we're going to look at the types of spiritual emergence that there are. Um, just briefly, this will just be a brief sort of summary, but just things that are personal, um, that I've found useful. The types of spiritual emergence that there are, potential causes of psychosis, and like I'm not a medical um, professional or anything, and obviously you should always seek um, proper advice and stuff. So this is, sort of um, my way of saying, you need your family and support workers and everything like that. This is more for probably people um, who are doing a spiritual practice and who are trying to cultivate in some way as to um, cure themselves of the diseases of the mind and spirit, um, and probably maybe people who are trying to deal with it a little bit as well, um, and like coping strategies. But I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the causes that I've seen, and do a reading from the Spiritual Emergence book on a point to do with proper integration period between times of deep spiritual practice, a lot of meditation, or perhaps a spiritual retreat or something like that, and the about the integration period. I have a cold at the moment. Um, and also what I've sort of found useful, or um, the ways that I've tried to interpret and integrate the experiences that I've had um, in my psychotic episodes or spiritual emergence experiences, and just give some examples of how I've um, the techniques that I use to try and interpret them, which isn't very in depth, but it will give some sort of idea of the kind of thing that you can look at. And it's also just sort of generally, I guess I'm doing this to just help improve public awareness of spiritual emergence, who is a network which I don't have anything in, like, I'm not personally involved in their network or anything like that, but there is a network called Spiritual Emergence, which, if you're a spiritual practitioner and you have experienced or are experiencing psychosis, um, they could be useful support, um, which, if you just Google Spiritual Emergence, you'll come up with their website, the Spiritual Emergence Network, and they can provide extra support as well. There's not really anything in New Zealand where I live, so I'm kind of just going about this um, in what way I can with the support that I have. So, yeah, the types of spiritual emergence, just to give you an idea, if you haven't had experience, or the ones that are listed on the website, just to give an idea, you've got Kundalini spiritual emergence, spiritual awakening, spiritual emergency, unitive consciousness, existential crisis, near-death experience, loss or change of faith, past lives, lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, divine experience, shamanic issues, channel medium experience, mystical sexual experience, dark night of the soul, visions, prana chi intensity, void experience, rebirth, renewal, entheogenic experience, ET, UFO, psychokinesis, possession, and they've got an other option as well. And I've experienced a lot of elements of almost all of those during my experiences, but a lot of the early ones I didn't really interpret or anything, and kind of I've only just really started looking at a proper process to interpret, and also sort of trying to not have those kind of experiences as well. So if to look at causes and stuff, obviously stress, which stress can be a big cause of psychosis or spiritual emergence, and so that's always something that you need to watch in terms of as a kind of preventative routine, is watching your environment, and seeing that that you can always remove yourself from a situation if that's becoming too much for you. One that I'm sort of looking at in terms of the book is the amount of spiritual practice that you do, and a lot of meditation can sort of bring on a psychosis if you get too internalized. I'm not speaking from like a lot of experience. I'm someone who's had this happen to me. I can't really speak as a um, professional or anything, so keep that in mind when I'm saying this. I'm not a professional in this regard, but I'm just providing extra support and trying to improve public awareness. Um, so yeah, like over practicing in your meditation and stuff can make you too internalized, and um, for me, a lot was discovering in terms of Christianity. Sort of the main things that you're following is to love the Lord with your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And I think for me, I was emphasizing love to the Lord more so than love to the neighbor, and I think that can actually contribute to um, becoming so internalized that a um, spiritual emergence experience happens. It's kind of a funny thing because they are transformative, so it can be a little bit difficult to tell, well, whether it's a good thing or not, because they're very difficult, and they challenge a lot of relationships within your sphere. The people around you get affected by them. Um, in spiritual emergence, they do have a way to sort of classify between people that are sort of unworkable and people that are workable. And generally, what I would recommend is that, say in Buddhism, you have the five poisons or something like that. I think they call them the five poisons. You've got anger, greed, lust, envy, jealousy, and if you're working on those things in your transpersonal practice, if you do have a spiritual emergence experience, it will be a lot more clean, and it'll be easier for other people to deal with you. Um, if you have the benefit of a therapeutic aid of some kind, then they're going to be able to deal with you a lot more. So I would recommend that you do meditation and you keep practicing, and whether you have the spiritual emergence or not, to still practice. However, when you are experiencing a psychosis or a spiritual emergence or emergency, generally they recommend that you don't meditate during that time. But I'd say that you definitely, in terms of devotional and looking to the Lord, that through your experience, while it's happening, to always look to the Lord for guidance within the experience. That's very important to help guide you through that process. But also stay away from anything within those five poisons. It's important not to get angry at people, and it's important to try and act appropriately as well. Like if there was some kind of sexual thing which could be related to Kundalini or something, it's important to not act out sexual things. Or when you're in it, it's very difficult to actually keep your behaviour in check, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But I think that's kind of the main difference between someone who's not workable and someone who is. Someone who is trying to actually deal with their process, integrate it and make sense of it in the scheme by continually looking to God within that experience. And I think that's when you really get into the more, what you would call more spiritual emergence than, say, psychosis or really bad cases of that where you just need medication and something like that. I think that everyone can probably be helped, because the causes aren't especially identified. One of the So one of the things to look for, yeah, is obviously integrating between your spiritual practice and your society and the people around you. So that's what I'll read some of the stuff about. Also, I read in um, a Kundalini Yoga book, if you've heard of Yogi Bhajan. Yogi Bhajan teaches Kundalini Yoga. It's a big society. Again, I don't have any particular involvement with that group especially, apart from that I listen to their music, and music's really good. And but they released a book on helping with different problems, and I had a look at the one on psychosis, and Yogi Bhajan said that the psychosis is caused by a type of unstuckness between your grounded level, your natural level, and your spiritual level. How I understand it, they've come apart a little bit, and you sort of getting swept away in all this experience, but you're not able to properly bring it into that natural level where you can properly integrate it and stuff. Um, so um, he he gives a practice that you can do, which he calls true glue, which sticks your spiritual, subtle, and physical bodies together a bit more. So that gives you some indication of if you were to say it's a problem that's occurring, you could say it's a kind of unstuckness, and that you're not. There's a problem between your physical body and your subtle body or bodies and spiritual body. There's not a correct thing going on there. Um, so I'll read a little bit of this spiritual emergence book. I'm not sure how much I'll read, but I'll read for a while. Um, the whole chapter's good. Generally, this book is really good if you've got any experience in this kind of thing, or if you want to know more or provide help for people. This is a really good book. Um, so here, he's just talking about in doing a spiritual practice and going through the process of integrating back into society and stuff like that, and how there's a difference between the values that you have in while you're meditating and the values that you have when you're operating in society. So here, I'll read some out. Um, um, this mental physical imbalance is a common phenomenon, even for people who are relatively balanced in practice. A very balanced meditator may require just a few days integration period, but whenever we take a concentrated and intensive inner journey in a retreat, we have to build into the system a re-entry process and a way to integrate the experiences either as we go along or at the end. So that goes for a psychosis experience as well. You need to reintegrate back into society and um, interpret the experience and find what meaning it has for you and how you can actually apply it in your operation. In Swedenborg, you have soul, body, and operation, and your operation is how you're operating out into the world. So, a second kind of difficulty that arises is an inability to make decisions. Many people who have done some spiritual practice tend to lose their ability to remember things and develop an increasing inability to make decisions. Um, so this is, I guess this is slightly off spiritual emergence in particular. This is talking more about doing a lot of practice or something, doing a lot of meditation practice. Um, so, yeah. Many people who have done some spiritual practice tend to lose their ability to remember things and develop an increasing inability to make decisions. In the extremes, they can become spiritual basket cases, pushovers, weak and indecisive. The thinking may go, oh well, it is all happening, and we will just wait and see what the Lord provides for us. They are unable to act and live in terms of work, family, relationships, or answer questions such as, where should I go, or what should I do next? This happens for a couple of reasons. One is because there is a disorientation when we spend time in a retreat setting or ashram, or even at home doing a lot of meditation. Since our attention is not on the world but on some other set of experiences and references. Secondly, and quite significantly, spiritual practice can often genuinely undermine worldly motivation. We set our motivation to look for the discovery of how the consciousness can grow, or how to develop the mind and feelings of universal love. While all these things are your focus, your motivation to get a job is turned down. You have turned down the heat, the interest in worldly things. I'm not sure how much of this I should read. You can kind of get an idea of it. The gist of it is that is an importance in the natural level, and I think that in in Christian terms, like your love to the neighbor is really your proper balance point, because if when you've got the neighbor, you've got the people around you, and that is a part of your practice as well. That um, you've got your individual meditation where you're just focused on God, and then there is God in the people around you, and how to see God in them and develop good relationships and stuff like that. All this kind of stuff brings you out a bit more into your natural level, and kind of will help in that regard. Um, um, I'll read more. Um, there arises an alternate set of values that brings many students into conflict when they re-enter the world. We have to see if in fact we want to ordain or renounce the world and live in a monastery. If not, we have to come to terms with the difficult task of what it means to live in the world in a spiritual way. That again is a part of the natural course of spiritual practice, and a kind of difficulty that people have to work with in their path and understand in themselves. The third difficulty arises because the thought processes will stop when we get concentrated, and when the thinking process slows down, because it is the basis for comparison used in making decisions, it is even hard to think straight. Without it, we feel empty or confused and unable to actually decide anything. The fourth difficulty is that, as we learn to develop an even-handed attention, our minds come to a state that neither grasps at the pleasant nor resists the unpleasant, which is the balanced kind of awareness needed for inner exploration. Yet it is different from the kind of attention that is needed to decide career plans or a marriage choice, or how to take care of our house or our car. That is a second kind of attention, called directed or skillful means, a wise reflection or a wise action, often not strengthened or even weakened at times by meditation. The kind of attention that one develops in inner meditation is more of a passive attention, where the active component is simply the brightness of your observation or investigation, but does not include the active component of choosing or deciding. There's more later on in the chapter, which is more um, like he goes on to say that actually if you're committed to meditation or inner exploration, um, if you've had psychotic experiences, he actually says that you'll probably re-experience them during your meditation. So there is a link between the psychotic experience or content itself and just the natural process of turning inwards and going on that inner journey. Um, yeah, I think I'll just give some examples of like um, psychotic content that I've had, or spiritual emergence content. Like generally, how what I've used to interpret it is that the psychosis includes like um, three different levels that you can interpret or understand it on. Um, the first one is what you could call id content, which is I'm sort of relying on Ken Wilber a little bit, and like so you have id content, which you could say is your lower chakras or something, which are aspects that are more psychological in nature and related to um, past experiences or things in your life. You could get a little bit of idea from when I describe in here, maybe, um, but sort of those lower chakra needs, and then you have like a sort of a middle one, which is sort of like consciously what you were trying to discover at the time that that thing happened. Um, and you can sort of interpret it in psychedelic experience as well. That maybe there was a particular question, and then you were getting this whole trip around what that main question was. So that's your sort of conscious level of what it was that you were trying to figure out. And then you have your transpersonal content, or upper chakras, which is the stuff that's coming in from higher levels, and that's giving the bulk of what the actual trip, if you say trip, is in the so to give an example, this is some some of the ones that I've gone through, and I'll just give the examples. Um, so say I had what I did is after I'd gone through the psychosis experience, which lasted about 2 weeks, I wrote down all the major themes that were covered, just a simple title heading for each one, and then took one of those title headings and then wrote down the trip, like what actually happened in the trip, and then tried to come up with what it was that I was asking or trying to figure out at that time, and then also interpreting it in terms of my own life or things that have happened to me, or sort of how you would interpret it psychologically, you could say. So one of these themes was creation of the universe. So that was the theme. The theme was creation of the universe, and I was having this experience, um, and I'll read it out. This is just from my personal uh, work on this thing. I was playing Krishna. I had my family with me. Shiva, who was my friend Eden, um, Brahma, who I kind of was, and there was a girl there. Shiva was always trying to trick me into not looking. We liked the girl, who was a girl called Kitty, and she was Radha. We had to wind up the material creation and start it again. Shiva did a dance, which I also did, but in a nice way. If you can understand, this is from the you have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and maybe I'll just carry on and just um, Shiva did a dance, which I also did, but in a nice way. Joel was Balaram. At the bottom of the circuit, there was this kind of circuit, which looked like this here. See these? It's like a circuit with a negative and a positive at the top. Um, Balaram at the bottom of the circuit, and we were trying to make it jump the gap to get all the magic in between. I was looking at infinite space with different appearances. The material creation had to be maintained when the bodies became too repetitive. This was in unity and plurality, which is another title heading for a different theme of the psychosis. It was another theme, and it shows how those two um, different themes related to each other within the experience, and then a kind of interpretation of it. So as the archetype I was taking on as Krishna, I was trying to understand creation, as in how does creation occur, um, creation of the universe, spiritual universes, all the beings, unity and plurality, which is how out of the one comes the many, you could say. There's one God, but there's many created beings, and there's many physical universes. Understand creation and a female aspect, understanding the divine feminine. And it was something to do with not looking I had in there, which was some idea that you would look, but then you would not look, and that had something to do with the creation thing. It gets a little bit, there's a lot going on in there, so it's kind of, that's one of the problems, is that you've got so much content that you can't interpret it properly, which is why interpretation is really important if you're going there, if you're trying to progress. So yeah, and Krishna and Balaram fighting. So this is kind of taking on archetypes. That's quite a common one, in one of the forms of spiritual emergence called psychological renewal through return to a center. There's taking on archetypal images and acting them out as though you kind of were those beings, and you're projecting those beings onto other people in order to understand some kind of thing that's going on. And they were fighting over a girl. Krishna and Balaram were fighting over a girl in the trip, and then and then I sort of had a go at interpreting it in a kind of psychological sense, and looked at, okay, there's a theme of sort of fighting over a girl or something. I've had things with my brother, who was actually in the trip as well, and we've had things with having a girl that we were both interested in at the same time, or something like that, or not actually at the same time, but like kind of and the kind of fight or conflict that can occur in between um, two guys and a girl, I guess. But so yeah, like looking at it, that's what I'm calling the id content or whatever. So that's like how that just relates personally in your life and where that content is related. So there's a relationship between them. That's how I understand. Yeah, I think I've got other ones here, but I think that's probably enough, and you can get a good idea. But that's what I'd recommend, and that just gives a few good guidelines. But if you can go through an interpretation period, that's far better. And journaling and logging and stuff. So yeah, so I just thought I'd make a video on that. I hope it was of some kind of use. I'm going to be making more videos on meditation practice and sort of different things to do with what you could call Christian Bhakti Yoga, or how that relates to Jesus in terms of psycho-spiritual technology, or like yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna make some more videos, and so I hope that you've got something out of this. Thanks thanks for listening.